an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Vorkosigan Saga Book Something, The Vor Game, Chapter 17, and only Chapter 17, because it's quite long, and also, I always talk too much. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Jeff for commissioning this episode. If like the original schedule had me starting a different book today, and we're just gonna have to slow everything down, guys. I think it's for the best. But this was nevertheless it was a long chapter, so there's plenty to talk about here, and we have some encounters. That we do. So, y'all, first of all, I said that it seemed a little too easy that our friends had escaped and gotten blown up and blah, blah, blah. And when I say friends, I mean enemies, mortal enemies. But it turns out that it's even worse than I thought. So Miles, he has his moments where he's checking in with everybody, and he goes to the sick bay and meets the wounded and tries to encourage them and yada yada yada. And all of this leads up to eventually him going to his room and finding Metsov and Cavillo both waiting for him. I kind of take back the yada 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 in terms of everything that he did before he goes back to his room, because this is evidence of a good leader. This is evidence of somebody who is really trying to make it clear to the people around him and below him that he gives a shit. He notices that they have sacrificed something here. You know, it's the sort of thing that I can imagine at this point most of us would just want to collapse into bed. We would give anything to be able to hightail it straight from one end of the ship to our room and just call it a day. And he pushes himself to meet with these people and attempt to really make it feel as if they've done something worthwhile. And when I say make it feel like they've done something worthwhile, it sounds like what I'm saying is he's trying to fool them into not you know what I mean? But it's not as dire as I'm making it sound. So I just want to acknowledge it just in terms of the kind of leader he is and how that is something that he has to have learned from his father, I'm sure. But it just feels, in face of the fact that he gets back to his room and finds Metsov and Cavillo there, it just falls to the background. I can't help that. So, and he's also dismissed his commando guard. So he goes in there, he's all alone, and the dusky red hue of General Metsov's face was even more arresting to the eye than the silver gleam of the nerve disruptor parabola in his hand, aim centered on Miles's head. Metsov had somehow acquired a set of Dendari Greys, a little small for him. Commander Cavillo, standing behind Metsov, had acquired a similar set, a little large for her. Metsov looked huge and furious. Cavillo looked strange, bitter, ironic, weirdly amused. Bruises marred her neck. She bore no weapon. So, Metsov comes at Miles hard and begins to strangle him and drops the nerve disruptor. He just drops it. he really, like, talking later, Cavillo says to Miles how everybody always underestimates her. And there is really no greater evidence of that to me than this moment when she is such a non factor to him that he drops a weapon in her presence and it never seems to have occurred to him that she would do anything with it. Genuinely blowing my mind. Like all of this. So he's got Miles around the throat and he's strangling him. And then Cavillo, she says, Stannis, darling, and taps Metsov, and he doesn't turn. Cavillo, clearly imitating Metsov's cadences, recited, "Open your legs to me, you bitch, or I'll blow your brains out." Metsov's head twisted around then, his eyes widening. She blew his brains out. I swear to God, this fucking monster, clearly, because she has bruises around her neck. So she is just reciting something that had just happened, obviously. Yeah, exactly. Emhan is in the chat saying he had just raped her too and he didn't even think of her as any kind of threat. Yeah, yeah. The man had raped her and then drops a weapon in front of her with his back to her. That is the most insulting shit. Like all of it all together. All of it, it forms this picture of what he really thinks of her that is so deeply offensive and insulting and disgusting. And I absolutely love the fact that she saves Miles and that she gets to kill Metsov. Fantastic. Oh, thank God. So he, you know, drops to the ground and he's like, so, why are you shooting me? And basically, what she says is, I think that you are going to actually keep your word and get me out of here. And if I want to have proper revenge against you, I am going to have to survive to see it happen. So, yeah, I am just gonna let the chips fall where they may because I have no doubt that eventually shit is going to turn up against you. Have no fear of that. Which, it is sort of a dire pronouncement. Uh, if Oser had issued more than one weapon between us, or if he'd given the nerve disruptor to me and the code to his cabin to Stannis and not the other way around, or if Oser'd taken us with him as I begged, things might have worked out differently. She strolled over to Miles' side. I underestimated you, you know. I never underestimated you. I know. I'm not used to that. Thank you. And then she turns around and kisses Miles, just as all of his friends bust into the room. I don't know what they thought of this, but it is very funny to me to think of them just walking in on this and being like, word? Really? I wonder what Gregor would feel if he came in and saw this. Um, so there's a break, and then we jump into Miles boarding the Prince Serg. And he is just like, my God, this place is gorgeous. All of this might have been his to command at some point, if it weren't for how things shook out, actually. Personally, I kind of feel like this is in his future anyway. You know, maybe not now, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon and for the rest of his life. No, not really. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there is a feel to this of like, we're getting a look at something that he almost had, it slipped through his fingers, but he is just so good that it's likely. I mean, what are the chances they find somebody more talented than Miles to handle this kind of a ship? I don't know, man. So they're being taken on a tour by Commander Nattachini. And he doesn't know who Miles is. He just knows him as Admiral Naismith of Baton, which is great. I will say, guys, there is one thing that really, really deeply disappointed me about the ending of this book, and that is the fact we do not get to see Tung meet Errol. You guys, I was so saddened by this. I really was. Like, this, I was waiting the whole time, and it never happened. I don't know if this is something that we're even going to get. If it's like, am I just sort of waiting on a fool's dream? Does the author not realize how much I would like this? Does she simply not fully understand the the way that this has preoccupied my mind? I don't know. I don't know. But we didn't get to see it, and I was super bummed. I completely understand that we don't want to blow the Admiral Naismith cover and tell him that Miles is actually a Vorkosigan. Fine. I would have enjoyed seeing the look on his face when he realized, but fine. If we're not getting that, I accept it. But at the very least, meeting Errol, I would have loved it. I really would. Oh, oh well. Can't have it all, I guess. Um, so Tung, Elena, and Chodak were all goggling like tourists, too. Miles called them firmly to attention to receive and return the crisp, welcoming salutes of their hosts. We will join Admiral Vorkosigan for lunch in the senior officers' mess after your meeting and our tour. Our last dinner guest there was the president of Paul and his entourage 12 days ago. Certain that the mercenaries understood the magnitude of the privilege they were being granted, the Baryaran exec led the happy Tung and Chodak off down the corridor. Miles heard Tung chuckle under his breath, "Lunch with Admiral Vorkosigan." You guys, I'm telling you, why didn't we get to see it? Ah. So then we are left with Lieutenant Yegorov, who also doesn't know that Miles is a Vorkosigan. This is so delightful. First, he tries to establish what the fuck Elena is doing here. She meets with his approval eventually. Miles, he's just sort of like, I don't know what your deal is, but I'm telling you right now, bruh, you better not bring any of your Baryaran bullshit or Baton bullshit into the room with us when you meet my guy, because he is a very important, very great man, and you have to show some respect or we are going to have a problem. I can't blame Miles for his reaction to this at all, because basically he just chortles a little and says like, "Oh, a real stuffed shirt, huh? If we pour enough wine into him at lunch, he'll loosen up and tell dirty stories with the best of them." I mean, I'm sorry, but that is delightful. Yegorov's polite smile became fixed. Elena, eyes dancing, leaned down and whispered forcefully, "Admiral, behave." "Oh, all right," Miles sighed regretfully. The lieutenant glanced in gratitude at Elena over Miles's head. Oh, man. So, as soon as they get into the room, he has to be like insulting out of the gate. "You imperial snails are going to get all fat and soft lolling around in this kind of luxury, you know." And the Admiral jumps up out of his chair and runs around, and it mentions that he has tears in his eyes, and he just grabs Miles and hugs him. Lieutenant Yegorov, cut off in mid-announcement of their arrival, was standing with his mouth still open, looking perfectly stunned. Lieutenant Joel, suppressing a grin himself, arose from the other side of the console desk and guided Yegorov gently and mercifully out the door. That was so delightful. I really enjoyed this moment. I look, anytime that you get to have a little like, oh, I'm gonna play around with somebody, and then very shortly after they figure out the truth, it's just like candy. It's just delicious. It's not necessary. It's probably not like great for the story a lot of the time, but I just eat it up. I love it so much. So Cordelia sends her best love and hopes to Elena and tells her home is where, when you have to go there, they have to take you in. And Elena says that she will remember very clearly, I'm not coming home right now, but it's nice to know. If I do, I am welcome. And Miles notices that his father looks like shit, super tired, and thinks to himself, like, Jesus Christ, Gregor. Gregor has a lot to answer for. And I couldn't help but think, like, Miles, no offense, but are you fucking hearing yourself? That's it. I mean, of course, with Gregor, yes. But do you not think that your father was flipping the fuck out about you also? Like, my guy, he just, it really seems to have not even occurred to him. He doesn't even factor it in. Um, so they talk about the ceasefire, and and he mentions, like, I can't believe that we went through all of this just to return to how things had been right before. And his father says not quite for everyone. A number of Sitagandan's senior officers have been recalled to their capital to explain their unauthorized adventure to their emperor. Their apologies are expected to be fatal. And Miles is like, oh, come on. Because basically, what he's saying here is, oh, they're going to act like they went and did this on their own, that these weren't orders that they were explicitly given. This was this, like, ridiculous thing that they went off on their own and risked it all. Come now. My goodness. But, this is how this shit works. It makes sense. A retreating enemy should be offered all the face he can carry off. Don't let him carry off anything else. I expected it would be Simon Ilian to show up in person to haul us home. He longed to come, but there was no way we could both leave home at the same time. The wobbly cover we'd put over Gregor's absence could have collapsed at any moment. If you guys hear that, I'm sorry. My dog is chewing a bone and is quite loud about it. We picked out a younger officer who looked a lot like Gregor, told him there was an assassination plot afoot against the Emperor and that he was to be the bait. Bless him, he volunteered at once. He and his security, who had the same tale, told them. I mean, this is something that I just don't, like, you have to be raised in Barriar, right? Right? Like, look, show of hands out there, folks. Whomst among you would be told, hey, you look just like our ruler, and somebody is going to try and kill them. So really appreciate it if you would sit there in his place instead. Who would volunteer for this? Because I would absolutely fucking never, and I have no apologies about that at all. And it's like I said, you got to be raised in Barriar, I guess. I suppose. Um, so I was surprised that you got your forces past Pole so fast. I was afraid they wouldn't let you through. Yes, well, that's the other reason you got me instead of Simon. As Prime Minister and former regent, it was perfectly reasonable for me to make a state visit to Pole. We came up with a quick list of the top 5 diplomatic concessions they've been wanting from us for years and suggested it for an agenda. It being all formal and official and above board, it was then perfectly reasonable for us to combine my visit with the Prince Serg shakedown cruise. We were in orbit at Pole, me still trying desperately to talk our way into the hub without shooting anybody, when word of the Sitagandan surprise attack broke. At that point, getting permission was suddenly expedited. Getting the Aslanders to lie down with the Polians was a trickier matter. Well, this worked out. Um, it astonished me that you permitted him to jump with you into the fire zone, him being Gregor. I hadn't expected that. Well, when you came down to it, the Prince Serg's fleet tack room had to have been amongst the most tightly defended few cubic meters anywhere in Vervain local space. It was it was Miles watched with fascination as his father tried to spit out the words perfectly safe and gagged on them instead. Light dawned. It wasn't your idea, was it? Gregor ordered himself aboard. He had several good arguments to support his position, Count Vorkosigan said. The propaganda angle certainly seems to be bearing fruit. So then we get a very quotable line that has been underlined a number of times according to my Kindle. I thought you'd be too prudent to permit the risk. The most morally dangerous moment for a guardian is when the temptation to become a puppet master seems most rational. I know that I say this sort of thing all the time, but I'm going to say it again. Can we say it with me, kids? This is why I don't want kids. Oh my God, the very idea. I mean, no, 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 no. I get it. He's right. I know this, but my God. Um, so, I'm more than ever convinced the regular service is not the place for you. It's like trying to fit a square peg. No, worse than that. Like trying to fit a tesseract into a round hole. I won't be discharged, will I? Elena says, basically, well, you could get a job as a mercenary if you were. I bet Cavillo is looking for some good men. Ah, and then we find out that Metsov had been about to go to trial. He didn't know it, but they tracked down on. And the way that this conversation starts is Vorkosigan saying, because Miles is like, oh, you figured out that that was a murder. And On is like, or Errol says, two murders. So it's very understandable that Miles immediately is like, two murders? Wait, oh my God, did he find On? Did he kill On? And I didn't even like, as soon as he said it, I was like, oh, that would really suck. And it turns out, no worries, that's not it. But I definitely jumped to the exact same conclusion that Miles did here for a moment. So it turns out that Metsov had just like killed this, he tortured somebody to death without meaning to exactly. He apparently had some hidden medical weakness, but it was not in revenge for the death of the guard. It was the other way around. The Barriaran guard corporal who had participated in, or at least acquiesced to the torture, though over some feeble protest, according to On, the corporal suffered a revulsion of feeling and threatened to turn Metsov in. Metsov murdered him in one of his panic rages, then made On help him cook up and vouch for the cover story about the escape. So On was twice tainted with the thing. Metsov kept On in terror, yet was equally in On's power if the facts ever came out. A kind of strange lock on each other. And now that Metsov's dead, there's really nothing to be done. They're not going to, have a trial, so On's pretty much out of it. But yeah, we're going to quietly drop it. Metsov, a goat to the end. Must be some bad karma clinging to him. Not that he didn't earn it. So, speaking of justice, I'm concerned over the matter of Dendari pay. And Vorkosigan, I keep saying that even though we've got two Vorkosigans in the room. When I say it, I almost always I'm going to call his son Miles. I almost always mean Errol. But he is like, yeah. We have thought this through already. And the budget that was assigned by Ilian is absolutely not going to be enough, but you seem to have friends in high places. So we're going to get the money. Just give us a bill. And Miles already has a bill waiting on like a thumb drive in his pocket. And it's like, here, this is everything. She worked overnight to get it done. And Vorkosigan is kind of gratified by this. I'll have a credit chit prepared over lunch. You can take it with you when you depart. Sir, Elena put in, leaning forward earnestly, what will happen to the Dendari fleet now? Whatever it chooses, I presume, though they cannot linger this close to Barriar. Are we to be abandoned again? Asked Elena. Abandoned? You made us an imperial force once, I thought. Baz thought. Then Miles left us, and then nothing. Just like Kyril Island, Miles remarked. Out of sight, out of mind. I gather they suffered a similar deterioration of morale. Count Vorkosigan gave him a sharp look. The fate of the Dendari, like your future military career, Miles, is a matter still under discussion. So, then Miles is like, all right, so you want me to keep this cover when I'm around Tongue? Because I'm going to have to be Admiral Naismith. And his father is like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to be really interested to see. Like, I've never gotten to see you in this role. And Miles says, I should warn you, Admiral Naismith is not very deferential. Elena and Count Vorkosigan looked at each other and both broke into laughter. Miles waited, wrapped in what dignity he could muster, till they subsided. This really reminded me of any time that Rashawn comes to visit. Her and Owen roast me constantly. And it's like, I just have to let it happen and just be like, yeah, go ahead, say your funny little thing. Oh my God. But it is, I mean, they're not ever wrong. They really aren't. But it is very like, just have to sit there and let them get it out of their system. Um, so anyway, uh, we jump ahead a little bit and let's see. It's a pleasure doing business with you, honorable gentleman, Miles said, pocketing the chit with satisfaction and carefully sealing the pocket. I really want this first sentence here, guys. I really want to read it out loud so that you can hear the tongue twister it is, because I had a moment when I was listening to the audiobook where I was like, there is no way that narrator got it on the first try. The Vervani government courier handed the credit chit across the homeside station commandant's console desk. I had to practice it. But there's just a lot of C words. It's the least we can do, said the jump point station commandant. I cannot tell you my emotions knowing the next pass the Cetagandans made was going to be their last, nerving to fight to the end when the Dendari materialized to reinforce us. The Denari couldn't have done it alone, said Miles modestly. All we did was help you hold the bridgehead till the real big guns arrived. My planet will be expressing its opinion of that in more tangible form quite shortly. May I escort you to the ceremony, Admiral? It's time. Medals, huh? Medals buy no fleet repairs. I do really enjoy this aspect of Miles because so many Barriarans, like, the tradition is so strong in them that the honor of this sort of thing would be very marked, you know? And Miles is so practical because he has like been out there and dealt with some real shit that he's like, yeah, this is all very nice, but like money, please, you know? Um, so he gets awarded a medal And then the Prince Zerg was in orbit above the Vervani homeworld, while high-level, literally, talks continued. They paused in the corridor outside the large briefing room where the ceremony was to take place. Miles saw Commander Cavillo arrive, with her Barryaran honor guard. As far as he knew, the Vervani were not yet aware that the honor guard's weapons were lethally charged, and they had orders to shoot to kill if their prisoner attempted escape. So, this, like, encounter, you guys, Cavillo comes up to Miles, and she has doused herself in that fucking perfume that basically put him into almost what seemed like an asthma attack. And Miles is ready. I cannot, y'all, with the fact that he was totally prepared for this. He has got 2 nose filters and he puts them in his nostrils and just breathes fine. Cavillo watched this performance with an expression of thwarted fury. "Damn you," she muttered. Miles shrugged, palms out, as if to say, "What would you have of me?" I love this so much. You guys, I had sort of thought that there was going to be something really, like, serious that would happen with this perfume. And I'm sort of, I'm sorry, my light keeps turning on and off. I don't know what's going on there. Um, I am sort of gratified that while something does pay off with it ultimately, it is just kind of a silly little petty thing. That it's not really her attempting to, like, kill him. She's just trying to make him uncomfortable and she can't even, like, get that. Oh, that is such a bummer. And of course, as they are parting, he has to be like, "Well, I thought you should know. We've been paid 3 times over, so we've really made quite a lot of money." And she just hisses at him. She literally hisses at him. Oh, God. Would Cavillo have the iron nerve to accept her honor on behalf of the Rangers her twisted plots had destroyed? Yes, it turned out. Miles gagged quietly. "The first medal I ever won," Miles thought, as the station commandant pinned his on him with an embarrassingly fulsome praise. "And I can't even wear it at home." I really do enjoy the fact that this, like, he's watching her accept this thing that she did the exact opposite of, right? Where they're praising her for her part in saving everything, and she had been working toward the opposite aim, and yet she's accepting this and doesn't seem to have an issue with that. But then Miles, who himself did do the things that they are awarding him for, he still almost can't deal with accepting these honors that are justified, that are, that he has actually earned. And it is just such a funny, like, change in or difference in temperament. I really understand it. Like, I am somebody, it's so weird, guys. I want to be the best in anything I do. I want the acknowledgement that I am the best. But also, please don't, like, say it to me in front of people. It's very, like, like, I want to know, but I also don't want it to be a thing that I have to, like, sit through. Very uncomfortable. And it's just a weird thing where there's been a lot of memes going around from people who I feel have the same sort of temperament as I do, where it's like, yes, I need constant validation every single day, but also no, I do not know how to accept a compliment. So please just leave gifts at my feet. And if that isn't the entire fucking mood, I don't know what is. Like, please don't say the thing. Just don't. I can't. It's too weird. You want to buy me a present? Perfect. No words needed. I get it. You get it. We're good. It's fine. But yeah, I really do understand this. Um, so he goes back to Barrayar and he meets up with Gregor. And this is a delightful little Miles sipped scalding coffee and plotted an assault on a second pastry, which cowered across the table linen under a thick camouflage of cream. Or would that overmatch his forces? This had it all over the contract slave rations they'd once divided, not to mention Cavillo's doggy chews. And then later on, he eats it, and then he's like wondering, maybe I should get a second one. He's just trying to decide. And then eventually, I'll have a third one because the servings are really very small. And I'll tell you what, guys, it's only described as a pastry under cream. There's nothing specific enough to really give me an idea of what this is. But my God, I wanted one so bad. I really did. I was like, whatever this is, give me it instantly, please. Also, the scalding hot coffee with it. Ooh, chef's kiss. Yes. Um, and Gregor also is just like, space stations are fucking boring. I just, being here on Barrier all the time, I did not see how gorgeous it was. And that after being in space, I appreciate it a lot more now. Um, Most officers have finished their jobs when the action begins because the battle transpires too rapidly for the officers to affect it, Miles assured Gregor, who brightened upon hearing Miles had never issued an actual battle order. Once you set up a good tack comp, and if you're lucky, a man with a magic nose, it's better to keep your hands in your pockets. I had tongue, you had... and nice deep pockets, said Gregor. I'm still thinking about it. It seemed almost unreal till I visited sickbay afterwards and realized such and such point of light meant this man's arm lost, that man's lungs frozen. And I just thought that was a really interesting, the difference in the way that warfare has worked over centuries and how distant we can be from it because of technology today. It's already like that feeling of distance feels kind of horrific. And this just, it takes it to such a new level. I don't, it's hard for me to really even grasp it. So in the background, you can see Pippin. What are you doing in there? He's going into my closet for some reason. He's a little stir crazy this evening. Um, so Miles is finally like, all right, have you talked to Ilian about what really happened with you just accidentally falling off of the fucking balcony? And Gregor says, I said I was drunk. And then he looks at Miles. Well, no, he doesn't make much eye contact throughout this conversation. But Gregor says, how did you know? And Miles says, he doesn't talk about you with secret terror in his eyes. Now, I thought that was surprising, that response, because you guys, when he says, how did you know? I thought what he was actually asking was, how did you know it didn't go the way I said it went, where it was an accident? How did you know that I really had started to throw myself off in, the attempt to take my own life? But he doesn't correct Miles's response. So I guess that he just assumed Miles knew already, which is probably like a good, what's the word? It's probably good practice to assume that Miles knows things because he just does seem to excel at putting two and two together. Can you please get out of here, sir? What are you doing? This dog, he's normally not this stir crazy. But yeah, so basically he says I wouldn't tell him because he's just starting to let me have my way in some things and I don't want to fuck it up. And I appreciate that you didn't tell him either. And Miles is like, okay, I'm not gonna, you're welcome. However, you really do need to talk to somebody about it. And ultimately suggests his mother to Gregor, his own mother. And Gregor seems somewhat amenable to this. Um, she can keep her own counsel. I'll think about it. And I don't want to be the only one. I know when I'm out of my depth. You do? Gregor raised his brows, one corner of his mouth going up. Oh, yes, I just don't normally let on. All right, I will, said Gregor. Miles waited. My word, Gregor added. Miles relaxed, immeasurably relieved. Thank you. Are you feeling better these days? Much, thank you. Really? I don't know. Unlike that poor sod they had parading around playing me while I was gone, I didn't exactly volunteer for this. It doesn't look like such a tough post compared to Kirill Island. Try it alone, in bed, at midnight, wondering when your genes are going to start generating monsters in your mind, like Great Uncle Mad Yuri or Prince Serg. His glance at Miles was secretly sharp. It's so funny that I was asking so much earlier in this book about how, like, whether he knew or not. And that turns out to be a major part of what drove him over the edge that night. Miles says he knew, and Gregor's like, yeah, fucking apparently everybody did, except for me. When did you find out? During the Komar conference, I'd run across hints before, put them down to enemy propaganda. Was it true that he really got off torturing? Not everything rumored about Crown Prince Serg is true. Miles cut hastily across this, though the true core is bad enough. Mother knows. She was eyewitness to crazy things even I don't know about the Escobar invasion. But she'll tell you. Ask her straight, and she'll tell you straight back. She'll tell you how different you are from him. Nothing wrong with your mother's blood that I ever heard. Anyway, I probably carry almost as many of Mad Yuri's genes as you do, through one line of descent or another. Is that supposed to be reassuring? More on the theory that misery loves company. And Gregor then says, I'm afraid of power, and Miles is like, you're afraid of hurting people with it. And Gregor confesses he is afraid that maybe he will enjoy it. Like, the hurting won't be something that he detests. And Miles is like, bruh, I've seen you go hunting. And you did it because you had to, and it was expected of you, somebody of your rank, but you clearly didn't like it. And you almost threw up a couple times. Like, no, sadism is definitely not your thing. Um, and Gregor is also thinking about how he could have killed Cavillo, and none of this shit would have happened. If none of those horrors had come to pass, she wouldn't have deserved to be strangled. Some kind of time travel paradox, I'm afraid. The If none of those horrors had come to pass, she wouldn't have deserved to be strangled. I don't really understand what he means, because, like, just the fact that she took them prisoner, I would think, would be enough to deserve to be strangled. I'm not entirely sure what Miles means here. Like, this is such a weird normally I don't feel like Miles is just trying to make a person feel better. He'll try and soften things or approach it in a way that's like, I'm telling them what they need to hear right now, and I think that's what's going on here. But it's just interesting because when Miles approaches things that way, normally we get a little hint that that's what he's doing in his internal monologue. And we don't get that here. It feels like he is sincere in what he is saying. And I just really wanted to hold up a hand and just be like, what do you mean? Like, that wouldn't have been necessary. A bitch was out here like killing people left and right and willing to betray anybody. No, if he had strangled her, it would have been fine. It would have been absolutely the probably ideal situation. I mean, I don't know. So, uh, Gregor, I'm sorry, but I just don't think Mad Emperor Gregor is in the cards. It's your advisors who are going to go crazy. I suppose it would disturb the guards if I tried to shove a cream tort up your nose. Deeply. You should have done it when we were 8 and 12. You could have got away with it then. The cream pie of justice flies one way, Miles snickered. Um, and then Miles tells him, look, I know that you don't like flattery for obvious reasons, but I have to tell you, you are good at your job, and I think you know that. So just stay on it. You're going to stay on yours too, right? Whatever it may be. I'm to meet with Simon Ilian on just that topic later this afternoon. You don't sound exactly excited about it. I don't suppose he can demote me. There's no rank below ensign. He's pleased with you. What else? He didn't look pleased. When I gave him my debriefing, he looked dyspeptic, didn't say much. He glanced at Gregor in sudden suspicion. You know, don't you? Give! Mustn't interfere in the chain of command, said Gregor sententiously. Maybe you'll move up it. I hear the command at Kyril Island is open. Oh, God. Um, Emhan is saying if Gregor did strangle her, Miles would have died screaming shortly thereafter with no one to check Metsov. It's a good thing Gregor didn't do anything rash, even if Cavillo deserved it. I'm not sure if I believe that. Like, I feel like it was Gregor who was checking Metsov, not Cavillo. So if he had strangled her, I feel like Gregor could have still handled Metsov and kept Miles safe. I don't know. You know, I feel like Gregor could also. What Metsov really was angry about was having dedicated so much of his life to the military and then being let go without like any means to support himself. So Gregor could have promised him to be either reinstated or to get some sort of like pardon. Like there could be all kinds of things that he could promise, whether or not he ever delivered on them. I feel like Miles would have been okay, but I may be wrong. I may be wrong. So, um, then we go to Miles, who is meeting with Ilian, and again, just like he has this feeling of anxiety, but based on the way that Gregor was behaving in that previous scene, I was like, dude, I don't think you really have much to worry about here. Um, so Miles takes a seat, and Ilian leans forward and says, "It seems you still have a problem with subordination." And he accuses Miles of not following orders. And Miles points out, technically, you gave me some general orders of things you wanted figured out and handled. And I figured out and handled all of it. Plus, I rescued Gregor, which, like, wasn't an order, but I sort of thought that you would want it done. Ilian searched him for irony, lips thinning as he apparently found it. Oh my god, I love this so much. Like, yeah, somebody else may have been able to present this as simply a good faith argument that, well, I don't understand, sir. But not Miles. He can't. I mean, fucking same. I can't keep shit off my face. I really can't. I gave those orders to Captain Ungari. I gave you just one. Can you remember what it was? Obey Captain Ungari's orders, Miles recalled reluctantly. Just so. Ungari was a good, reliable operative. If you'd botched it, you'd have taken him down with you. The man is now half ruined. He made the correct decisions for his level. You can't fault him. It's just things got too important for me to go on playing ensign when the man who was needed was Lord Vorkosigan or Admiral Naismith. So who shall I assign you to now? Which loyal officer gets his career destroyed next? Why don't you assign me directly to yourself, sir? Thanks, said Ilian dryly. I didn't mean... And then he sees that Ilian is sort of smirking. In fact, just that proposal has been floated. Not needless to say by me, but a galactic operative must function with a high degree of independence. We're considering making a virtue of necessity. And then he gets distracted. And in comes Gregor. And he sits down and says, did you tell him about the Dendari yet? We've decided to put them on permanent retainer, said Ilian. You, in your cover identity as Admiral Naismith, will be our liaison officer. And Miles is just like, oh, what? Okay. Consulting mercenaries? Gregor grinned. The Emperor's own. We owe them, I think, something more than just their base pay for their services. To us, and to us. And he keeps doing this, like with the royal we. Which is interesting because it's noted. There's a moment where Ilian is seeming sort of like approving despite being a little sad. And earlier with Errol, same thing, that they're both like seeming to be almost relieved that Gregor is starting to press his authority more. And yet they have to admit there's concern there. You know, he's new to this. They're worried about him. They seem to have genuine affection for him. So it's just like a parent, you know, you see your child beginning to make major decisions for themselves and they don't really need you the way they did. They still need you, but you aren't in charge anymore. And I'm sure that has to be a really bittersweet sort of, you know, transition into a whole new era of life. Um, so uh, I see them as more used in espionage than covert ops. This isn't a license to go adventuring, or worse, some kind of letter of marque and reprisal. In fact, the first thing I want you to do is beef up your intelligence department. I know you're in funds for it. I'll lend you a couple of my experts. Not bodyguard puppeteers again, sir, Miles asked nervously. Shall I ask Captain Ungari if he wants to volunteer? Inquired Ilian with a suppressed ripple of his lips. No, you will operate independently, God help us. After all, if I don't send you someplace else, you'll be right here. So the scheme has that much merit, even if the Dendari never do anything. I fear it is primarily your youth which is the cause of Simon's lack of confidence, murmured 25-year-old Gregor. We feel it is time he gave up that prejudice. Yes, that had been an imperial we. Miles' barrier and tuned ears did not deceive him. So, yeah, this is a nice little moment, and I'm very excited because it's time they understand that Miles, yeah, this boy is not built for the normal progression of life. He's about to jump into some shit since day one, before day one for him. He's been in the midst of all this shit. Makes sense, right? Like, and they give him a promotion to lieutenant, and he just immediately says, well, that's a start on the subordination problem. And Ilian's like, 10% of ensigns are promoted after their first year, so don't go letting that go to your head. Also, everybody's going to think it's just because you're Vorkosigan's son. And Miles is like, yeah, I know. And Ilian says, your father will know better, though, and Gregor, and myself. Miles looked up to catch his eye directly for almost the first time this interview. Thank you. You earned it. You won't get anything from me you don't earn. That includes the dressing downs. I look forward to them, sir. And that is the end of the book. I, for one, am pretty excited that after having just said in the last recording that we don't, with these books, we haven't really had a baddie that like gets away and is still a threat in another book. I'm excited that Cavillo is still out there. I don't know, sometimes with things like this, authors will play a long game and they will put somebody, they'll let them loose, but they won't bring them back into the next book right away. They'll let it simmer a little. But these books feel pretty like fast moving, and I just think that probably we're going to see Cavillo again in the next one. And I really do look forward to it because she is simultaneously such a good rival for Miles because of her intelligence, but also so kind of bonkers, like just this side of crazy. And also the effect that she clearly has on the men around her and that she utilizes that. She's just very fun to watch. And I personally would be very intrigued if we could get a what if these two both needed to work toward the same end? What if they were put in a position where they needed the same thing and had to work together? And obviously, you still don't want to trust Cavillo because she's going to have created a plan within that plan to get something for herself. But I just, I don't know. I feel like that could be kind of fun to watch. At the same time, the fun of it for Miles so often is figuring out what it is that she's really planning. And if they're on the same side, I guess it would be him having to figure out what she's really planning behind his back in that case. But I'm thinking way too far ahead. I just really enjoy Cavillo, and I like the fact that basically she betrayed so many different groups of people in this book, and Miles being like, you've got to pick a fucking lane. You're just doing whatever. And it's fucked you up completely. Once you decide on a thing, you gotta see it through. And there's an episode of Community where there are like multiple people who have set up sort of like, I'm going to teach you a lesson kinds of pranks where they're like, oh, I'm going to teach you about the dangers of gun violence. And it's like they got shot, but then it turns out they're fine. It wasn't real. And over, people keep like coming into the story having done another one of those so that there's just shootings happening and everybody's like, this is completely out of control. And eventually somebody's like, okay, we have to have like a reason for this. Otherwise, it's just doing random crap. And that was kind of what I felt like Miles was saying to Cavillo at that point, was just like, girl, you were just, you were just trying for too many things. So also, I like, I am kind of interested, and I say this with reservation, but I am kind of interested in Miles being unwittingly or maybe unwillingly entranced by Cavillo, despite knowing that she's kind of a monster, because this is such a thing in books where women protagonists are our mains, where she's got like the good wholesome guy who wants the best for her but isn't really that exciting, and then she's got the bad boy who's out here pushing boundaries and a little bit dangerous, a little too violent probably, and yet she can't stay away from him, and the chemistry between them. And I would really enjoy seeing something like that from Miles's perspective, because usually those sorts of things in the books that I have come across are really boring, because I find either the bad boy to be way too problematic that he would not be an option, or the good guy to be so like flat and boring that he doesn't feel like competition at all. And the main character doesn't handle it well a lot of the time. But Miles is so intelligent and so aware of like the ways that he could be manipulated in this manner that I think reading that sort of thing from his perspective would be a lot more interesting. And also because she herself is more intelligent than a lot of those characters, you know? So the two of them combined, it's just really, you guys, I really have to step back and be like, Lois McMaster Bujold has to be incredibly intelligent because she writes smart characters that are genuinely smart. And it is so hard to find. Like, I was saying this to Owen about these books a few days ago, that I feel like I am reading a character that is meant to be smart, that feels actually smart, instead of just being written to seem smart to people who are only kind of smart. There's a very distinct feeling that comes with somebody who, you know, is ahead of you, and you're pleasantly surprised by the fact that they came up with this idea that you're like, nice, I would not have thought of that. And it is rare. It really, really is. So I feel like I'm getting a sort of rare treat here. It's very fun. All right, I've got to wrap this up, but thank you guys again so much. I'll be starting, I think the next book is called Cetaganda. So I'll be starting that for the next one. I hope that y'all have been enjoying the coverage. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.